Today on a spicy production, we're making ooey, gooey, beautiful, buttery cinnamon rolls with a cream cheese butter icing that will blow your mind. First thing we need to do is warm up some whole milk to just above body temperature. Don't go too hot. Then we need to stir in 2 1/4 tablespoons of active dry yeast. Let that bloom for 10 minutes. This will help you ensure that the yeast are alive and able to do their duty, rising your cinnamon rolls. While the yeast is doing its thing, let's get everything else together we need. I have a stand mixer, but you could do this by hand. First thing going in is about 3.5 cups of flour. I save about a half a cup of flour for the end of the mixing process. Then I throw in 1/2 cup sugar and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Give everything a quick spin to kind of combine it all. Once your yeast mixture is foamy, throw it in, followed by 2 large chicken eggs. Let it spin for a little while, and as it's coming together, throw in 1/3 cup softened butter, about a tablespoon at a time. Let this keep mixing and kneading until the dough comes together into a smooth ball and starts to pull away from the sides of the bowl. Most pastry doughs you don't want to mix violently because you're trying to slow down gluten development. In this specific recipe, the butter and the sugar are going to retard the gluten development to a point where it's not going to be significant enough to make the bite not tender. As you're throwing the butter in, you'll see it starting to smear on the sides of the bowl. When this starts to happen, just let it go, and eventually it'll work itself into the dough. If it doesn't, that's where we're adding the other additional 1/2 cup of flour. It'll help pull it into the dough as well as get the dough to the proper hydration. If you cook a lot, one investment I would make for yourself is a good stand mixer. There's so many things you can do with it, and it makes your life so much easier in the kitchen. Given all the attachments you can purchase for these things, it will significantly up your culinary game. Now that the dough is pulled away from the sides of the bowl, we're going to take it out of the bowl and remove the dough hook. For this next part, we need to make sure that the counter is free of any flour. We want the dough to slightly stick to the countertop here, not slide around. We're going to be trying to make a firm top ball with the dough so that we can let it rise. After wiping down your counter really good, you're going to want to pull the dough out of the bowl and give it a rough shape into a ball and set it down on the counter. Once you set it down on the counter, you want to use the friction of the counter to pull the ball into shape, and then we're going to oil the bowl and put it back in. Now cover it with plastic and fight with your plastic as you see me doing here. It's easier if you just use a damp cloth. Anyway, put into a warm place for about 45 minutes to an hour to let it rise. While that's proofing, we'll start making the filling for our swirl. With a cup of packed brown sugar, a tablespoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of allspice, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. You can adjust the levels of these spices as you see fit, or add or subtract to them. Heck, I've even put bacon in mine before. Now we're going to make icing. First thing you need to do is put a stick of butter in a bowl, followed by a 1/2 block of cream cheese. Then we're going to add some powdered sugar and some vanilla extract. One thing I need to reiterate here is I didn't have my butter or my cream cheese quite soft enough. This causes a huge issue when you're trying to blend it all together. First of all, I tried to use a whisk. It didn't work out too well. Then I tried to use a spatula and just turned into a big old mess. So if you just make sure it's soft to begin with, that's the easiest course of action here. Once everything's combined together, you can add some heavy cream to it to adjust the viscosity. You can also adjust the viscosity of it by applying heat. However, be careful, because if you break the butter out of the emulsion, then it just turns into a greasy mess. After all the fighting, what I finally realized worked the best was using the spatula just to smash everything together, and then I used the whisk to lighten it up once I added the heavy cream. We're going to set all of this aside. I usually set it over by my oven because the oven's going to be preheating, so it'll just stay warm so it's flowable, so that we can drizzle it on the cinnamon rolls when they're done. This icing is reminiscent of a classic cream cheese icing like you get at like Cinnabon or something like that. You can put whatever flavors you want. If you want to add some more cinnamon spice into there, allspice, it would be delicious. Maybe even some lemon zest. And you can adjust your butter content and your cream cheese content depending on what you're going for. More buttercream, more cream cheese, frosting, whatever you're looking to get. Once you get everything whipped together so it's one smooth mass, we're going to get our dough out and see how well it's proof. Once we uncover it and determine that it has indeed risen, we're going to turn it out onto a lightly floured surface and get ready to roll it out. This is going to show another one of the mistakes I made, and we will get to that momentarily. As you roll this out, you need to think even thickness and even size. We're looking for a rectangle here, hence the issue I run into. A round ball does not like to roll out into a rectangle. I think I'm doing good. I get everything to an even thickness, and I realize that this is nowhere near a rectangle. So what do? I try to get smart. I'm going to cut the edges off with my bench scraper and incorporate it into the lamination stage. Ah yes, but we have forgotten about the floured surfaces. What does flour do? It makes stuff not stick together. Oh well, I'll just fold it in and roll it out. It's got to stick together, right? Oh, it's just not working. We're going to have to come up with something different. And brute force for the win. We got everything to stick together and we got it laminated all at the same time. So, after that failure, now we're just going to roll it out and try to get it as close to a rectangle as we can. As you can see, I use the term rectangle rather loosely. But anyway, once you've got it into a rectangle-ish, amoeba-ish kind of weird shape, you're going to want to put on softened butter all over the surface. I used about 1/3 cup here. I didn't really show it on the film, but you want to try to leave one of the skinny ends a little bit blank so there's no butter on it, because you need to stick that for the seam. Just spread it out evenly. Next, we're going to grate some nutmeg on top. Freshly grated right off the nutmeg nut. Coincidentally, the inside of these nutmeg nuts look an awful lot like the inside of a truffle. I don't think that has anything to do with anything. It's just neat. Looks kind of like the inside of a brain. I'll show you in just a second. Freshly grated nutmeg tastes a lot better than the powdered stuff you get. That's why I do it this way. Now we're going to take our filling mixture and we're going to spread it all over the place. Try to leave that one end without any on it. Same reason, just so it'll stick together. And you'll notice that I'm trying to spread it out as even as possible. There's a few chunks and lumps in there, but it's not really gonna matter. Now I just kind of spread it out evenly and pat it down so that it kind of sticks into that butter a little bit. I don't know if that really helps, but it makes it a little easier to roll up. And when we start getting ready to roll this up, I'm going to keep that center tight a little bit, and then I'm not really pushing down on it real hard because I don't want it to end up just pushing all the swirl filling out. So just try to keep it even and even pressure. And then once we get it all rolled up, I'm going to pinch the end shut to try to keep as much of that filling in there as possible and kind of pack it in there. And then I'm going to even it all up. And I'll cut the ends off. I like to keep those just as fillers, and you know, you can keep them, they'll look kind of nice if you want to keep them swirl side up. And then we'll just evenly divide this dough. I think I got 6 pieces, maybe 8 out of this, and I'm just using my bench scraper. You might want to use floss or a really sharp knife. You'll see as I start cutting these, cut straight down, but you can see that the center tries to actually squeeze out a little bit, but just straighten them up. And then we're going to flip those up on end. And we're going to put them in a greased glass baking pan and just kind of get them in there. And then I just scrape up the extra filling that spilled out and put it over the top, because that'll just melt down into it, make them delicious. Put them off to the side, preheat your oven, and let them rise. Once they've risen and your oven's preheated, about 15-20 minutes, go ahead and throw them in for 20 to 30 minutes. Just keep checking on them, and once they're golden brown and kind of bubbling on the top, then pull them out, and there you go. Cinnamon rolls are all done. Let them cool off a little bit, and then you pull them out just like pull-aparts. Drizzle some of that nice frosting on there and sprinkle a little extra cinnamon on top. Behold the deliciousness. These things are awesome. Some of the best cinnamon rolls that I've ever made. And you can mess with this recipe as much as you want. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.